How's it going, everybody? This is Radishhead, and welcome back to another episode of Upland Analysis. I am recording this episode just after the conclusion of the Queen's stress test, which I think was probably the smoothest stress test that I've experienced since Chicago. And obviously the game has grown significantly since Chicago came out. We've had a lot of pretty rough stress tests since then. You guys comment below how you found it, but I found generally, obviously I wasn't able to get every property that I clicked on, but you know, there's thousands of people all going for the same properties. And of course I want to start this episode by thanking my executive level sponsors, Bad Frog, Matringo, and Monopoly Mike. You're also great. Thank you so much for the support. Let's talk about the full Queen's release, which we're expecting to see tomorrow, as of the time of recording. And wow, there is a lot to be excited about here. One other takeaway that I wanted to talk about from the stress test was that the properties in general were much cheaper than I was expecting. I don't know if Upland have fiddled around with the numbers in the background because they realised that people were scared off a bit by how expensive things were in Los Angeles, but yeah, I was able to get plenty of stuff for like 7k, 8k. I even managed to get something for under 5k in Jackson Heights. So yeah, I thought it was going to be a bit more expensive than Bronx, but it's comparable, if not slightly cheaper. So I'm pretty sure that Upland have been, you know, doing something in the background to try and ensure that the Queen's release sells out quick. With these numbers that I'm seeing, how quickly the stress test properties sold and how expensive they were, I'm actually genuinely expecting Queen's to maybe sell out in a day. I was sort of saying maybe 2-3 weeks before, but this was so much more accessible than I was expecting that I think, like as a stretch target, I think we could see Queen sell out in a day. So let's see if that happens. But enough with me talking about the stress test and my predictions for Queens. Let's talk about some collection predictions. That's what you're all here for. Of course, I do have to start by saying this is only my opinion. I've done some research on Queens. I've seen what the most iconic stuff is. I know what Upland like to consider when they're doing their collections. But as we all know, sometimes Uplands just go a bit wild. If they place their collections like I think they're going to do, there's a lot of really great stuff around here that people are going to be speculating on pretty hard. And the one which you just cannot avoid is Long Island City. Like, it's kind of where Queens started. It's sort of like the downtown almost. It's directly connected to Manhattan. And it's like, even though it looks like quite a big neighborhood, a lot of this is empty space. So there aren't actually as many properties here as you think. This is going to be super high demand. It's as I say, it's almost like the downtown equivalent. And just from a metaverse perspective, owning this land that is directly connected to Manhattan, and like the good bit of Manhattan, right? Like you're going straight into Murray Hill and Midtown. That is worth something in the long term. If you're in Upland for the long term, just being able to be a short car ride away from, you know, South Manhattan, that's amazing. And as I scroll around, Long Island City is home to some really key streets. Northern Boulevard is something that kept popping up in my research as an important commercial thoroughfare. In fact, I think it might be the most expensive real estate in Queens is Northern Boulevard. Lots and lots of marked properties on there, which, as you know, I like to measure as a gauge for how likely something is to be a collection. If there's loads of nice marked properties, Upland want your eyes to be drawn to it. There's a lot of them on Northern Boulevard, and there's a lot of them in Long Island City. It's also the start of Queens Boulevard, which is another very iconic street, and let's be honest, we're in Queens. There's a pretty good shot that a Queens Boulevard is going to make it as a collection. There's not much of Queens Boulevard in Long Island City. For most of it, you'll have to go through into Sunnyside. However, I want to say that Sunnyside is sort of in that same region, and I think that it's got a really good shot. Again, look at all these marked properties along Queens Boulevard. And Sunnyside, it's a nice size. It's like quite a small neighborhood. You know, I like smaller neighborhoods. Again, it's right over on that west side, and it is it merges between Queens Boulevard and Roosevelt Avenue. So if I just zoom in, this is Sunnyside, this is Roosevelt Avenue, this is Queens Boulevard. Roosevelt Avenue is another street. There's a lot of streets over on this side. So if you look them up, if you look up Queens, these are the places that people in Queens keep talking about. It's Northern Boulevard, it's Roosevelt Boulevard, it's Junction, is it Junction Avenue? I'll get to that. These names keep coming up, and Queens Boulevard is another one of those. You just can't really go wrong with that. And so while Sunnyside is just to the south of Long Island City, we've got Astoria, which is just to the north of Long Island City. It's got incredible cultural diversity, which ultimately is kind of Queens's thing. It's got so many different groups of people all like living together, even more so than, like, obviously New York kind of has that reputation as a whole. Queens is the borough where that is most encapsulated, and Astoria is the neighborhood where that is most encapsulated. So I think Upland love to emphasize that kind of element of a city. They like looking at, you know, Chinatown. We got, as I correctly predicted, we got Corktown in Detroit. Astoria, the food you can buy there is so varied, it's just really quite special. And of course you have Astoria Boulevard itself, not a very long street, so could be a collection. If Upland were to make a collection in this area, I think it would be Astoria Boulevard or Astoria. I don't think they'd have two collections that have that kind of name sharing thing, so speculate as you wish. I think it's more likely to be the neighborhood rather than the street, but you never know. And you can see why I was so excited about this stress test, because look, there's Sunnyside, there's Long Island City, there's Astoria, and then this is like Northern Boulevard going through into Jackson Heights, which was one of the stress tests, and then Roosevelt Boulevard goes along where my mouse cursor is here, through Woodside, and well, Jackson Heights is basically bordered by Northern Boulevard and Roosevelt Avenue, both extremely famous Queens streets. So well done to anybody who was able to grab anything on there. If you weren't, and you know, you're waiting on my collection predictions video before you speculated too hard in certain areas, don't worry, because Northern Boulevard and Roosevelt Avenue are both quite long streets. They're not going to be rare collections. If anything, they're going to be maybe exclusive collections. There's lots of opportunities to grab stuff in Flushing. Probably one of my most favoured candidates for a low-level collection. It's either going to be standard or it's going to be limited. I'd be very surprised if it wasn't anything. I know it's a big neighborhood, but having a collection in New York, it's going to be a win. You've got so much history in Flushing. It's got an absolutely iconic Chinatown, one of the biggest Chinatowns in the world. It's got a huge central business district area. As I say, it's got Astoria Boulevard, it's got Northern Boulevard, it's got Roosevelt Avenue, it's got Main Street. Main Street is not very long. If it made it as a collection, and it could do because it's one of the oldest streets in Queens, as you know, indicated by the name, it is a very important commercial thoroughfare, or at least it was. It's got a lot of great history, a lot of great architecture. It passes straight through Kew Gardens Hills, which in itself, nice small neighborhood. But Main Street, if you're able to get something on there, one, could be a rare collection. Two, it's called Main Street, so if you're working on the meta-venture side of the game, having your business on Main Street in Queens, wow, that's going to draw some eyes. Flushing, speculate on that. If you've got some upicks to spare, I think there's going to be a lot of reasonably priced properties around Flushing, and I think it's got a really good shot at being a collection. Also, look, we're just zoomed out. Look at these marked properties along here. It immediately draws your eyes. Is this Northern Boulevard? Yeah. Look at this. Flushing Town Hall, Peking Empire. Look at all this 7-Eleven, Gossip House, Korean barbecue, tofu. It never ends. Northern Boulevard, like, it reminds me of Ventura Avenue in Los Angeles so much. I'm going to be speculating on that pretty hard. So you'll see that we're sort of slowly moving our way further east. It's not all on the west side. And here we go. Queens Boulevard. I've already talked about it. Let's talk about some neighborhoods that it passes through. And really, any neighborhood that an iconic street passes through is always worth a look at, and we've got a couple of them down here. First of all, Forest Hills. Architecturally, is quite an iconic part of Queens. Of course, it's where Spider-Man is from. If you're thinking about that scene where the train tracks are going off, into the distance towards Manhattan side, that's Forest Hills. It's got a really interesting history. It's got a background of Italian American immigration, especially. It's just in the geographically quite a iconic. I love saying that word. Quite an iconic part of Queens. So Forest Hills, even the name, it just sort of sounds like a collection. I know people laugh at me when I say that. Doesn't it just feel like, own 3 properties in Forest Hills? It just sounds like a Queens collection to me. And on a similar note, Kew Gardens. This one's going to go really quick, so best of luck to anybody who speculates in here. But there's like 17-ish collections, and one of them has to be a rare neighborhood. Kew Gardens. There's not many neighborhoods that are small enough in Queens to be a rare neighborhood, and I don't think that all of the rares are going to be streets. I feel like there's got to be one rare neighborhood. Is this small enough to be rare? I'm not sure, but there's not many candidates. Kew Gardens, it's pretty famous. It's got a lot of really cool architecture. You don't even have to wait for the collections to be revealed, of course. If you want to mint something there and flip it for 5 times, 6 times what you paid for it, that's easy money, and people are going to pay it because, there's not much property available in Kew Gardens. It's a famous part of Queens. If you get something here, I'd be tempted to take advantage of the hype and flip it for what you can get and really push those prices up, because I'm pretty sure that people are going to be speculating pretty hard in Kew Gardens. Alright, we're almost done with my speculation here, and we're sort of continuing further east, further south. You've started in the northwest, and now we're going towards the southeast. Let's talk about Jamaica. And this is a neighborhood that kind of strikes me fairly similar to Flushing. It's got a really cool name. It's got this train station in Jamaica. By the way, even if it doesn't make it as a collection, if you manage to get some property over here on Archer Avenue, that's right next to the station, that's basically going to be worth as much as a train station terminal. Because if your explorer can access the terminal from your property, it means you don't have to pay anybody to send to the terminal, which is pretty amazing. To me, Jamaica and Flushing are the quintessential Upland like to have standard or sometimes limited collections that are quite big and quite accessible for, more players. I don't just like to speculate on the small stuff, which I think is going to be an exclusive. I like stuff like this because, if it was a collection, it's probably going to be a standard, but that doesn't really, that's not a big deal. Standard collections are still collections. If, you went to Long Island City, you went to Astoria, you went to Kew Gardens, it was all minted out, you need a backup. That's always been my motto, and I think Jamaica and Flushing are 2 really good backup locations, because don't get me wrong, these things they're still going to mint out pretty quick, within 20-30 minutes. But if you're there on launch day, that's enough time to go look over at the stuff on the the northwest side, and then come back over here, because there'll still be some stuff available, I guarantee it, but not for too long. Finally, because I'm kind of the small neighborhood guy, apparently, I haven't seen anybody talking about this, and I think I'm going to upset some people by mentioning it because I think they were kind of hoping that it had gone under the radar a little bit. Glen Oaks is kind of the smallest neighborhood that I think I found in Queens. It's already quite small looking at a map, and then you realize the whole north side of it is being taken up by this green space. There's probably only like 100 properties in here, if that. So it's almost too small to be a rare, but too big to be an ultra rare. Having said that, that even if it's not a collection, that doesn't mean it's not going to be valuable. Century City isn't a collection, but it's small, and even when it's small, a lot of it is taken up by like white space that isn't actually properties. It's kind of like Glen Oaks. So yeah, there's only going to be a couple of people who are going to be able to grab something here, but if you do, you already know that you're happy. So I don't really have to. You just have to look at the neighborhood boundaries and you already know you're happy. And really, on a wider note, as I was kind of alluding to, if you're able to grab anything in any neighborhood for under, I'd say, like 8k, you're probably doing really well. Because the floor in Bronx right now is about 13k, the floor in Brooklyn is about 12k. And I don't see why all of these aren't going to average out over time. And it looks like there's going to be, based on my experience of the stress test, there's going to be plenty of stuff, especially in these big neighborhoods like Flushing and Jamaica, for, less than 8k. You'll be able to flip those for 150% profit. Maybe up to 2 times what you paid for them. That's what Upland is all about. So you can't always count on getting this stuff over on the West Coast, which is where I think people are going to be speculating the hardest. Get those key streets, those key neighborhoods, but once you're done with that, once you've hit all your target areas, just look around the map, see if you could spot anything for 8k, 7k, 6k, just grab them all, because you better believe they're all good. They are going to go in a day, and people are going to be flipping them for 150% within hours. So that's my tip from me to you. And of course, I want to end this episode by thanking my executive and director level sponsors on the channel, Tushar Singh, Bad Frog, Mitringo, and Monopoly Mike. Thank you so much. And also, here is the reel containing all of the pro level members. Thank you so much, everybody, for your support of the channel. Together, we're going to make Upland Analysis into something fantastic. But that's enough from me for this. I hope you found the collection predictions useful. I hope you all do really, really well in Queens. I can't wait to hear how you all do. I'll see you in the next one.